Glad to be here at Crypto Mondays. It's going to be a great show put on by Sam Abbasi. We're going to talk about Bitcoin and blockchain basics. I'm looking forward to it.
Same.
A lot of great people in the house.
Absolutely, Miami Beach Chamber of Commerce as well.
Yeah, there's big players in Miami.
So why don't you introduce yourselves?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Dax. I work for Beta Blocks here. It's a local code builder and startup accelerator. We're really focused on education and community engagement. And essentially, we do a lot of corporate training and that sort of thing. But we're a small stage. We're based out of Miami, and we're really looking to kind of build our network. That's why we're here. It's other great people to connect with.
So Dax, you have a pretty interesting background, medical or something?
Yeah, so I'm actually a medical student at the Wertheim College of Medicine. Stumbled upon Bitcoin a long time ago. Hardcore libertarian, so it just kind of made sense, and started digging deeper, learning more about blockchain, and that's how I ended up here, I guess.
I got nothing to say.
Pretty cool. You want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Carlos. I'm here for the Crypto Mondays, hopefully to learn something new. Interested in the subject. I'm a software developer. I work for a caregiver staffing company here in South Florida, and that's pretty much it.
So what got you interested in blockchain or crypto?
It was actually a presentation that I saw about Sam Abbasi yesterday. Actually, yesterday, to tell the truth, and I just added to my calendar. I'm here, so I'm excited.
It's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Introduce yourself.
How's it going?
Good, man. So your name's, I know your name's Pedram, right? Want to introduce who you are?
My name's Pedram. I'm a Chief Technology Officer. I also work in artificial intelligence and blockchain. An expert in distributed systems.
It's awesome, man. So this is probably your 10th EOS meetup.
No, I think second.
We haven't had 10 yet, but it's cool. Welcome.
Thanks.
Want to be on here? Introduce yourself there. Introduce yourself. All right. So we're here at the US Miami meetup, or Crypto Mondays US edition with introduce yourselves, guys.
Jeffrey from Blockwolf.
I'm Islam, freelance web developer.
I'm Watch with City.
So guys, what brought you here?
So for me, it's really interesting to see how technology can be used more in financial services and how we can do that in this city. So that's my main interest.
It's awesome. So are you a programmer or are you?
No, I'm actually on the wealth management side. But I'm definitely interested in technology.
And we have the famous Slavo. He needs no introduction. I won't steal the thunder for later on, but the conquering hero, the biggest hackathon in Miami history. But I know
Thank you. You're confusing me right now, but thank you for nice words. I'm enjoying to participate in the hackathon. The main reason why I joined, I want to see if I can build something in 24 hours and to learn something in the same time while I'm building. And I learned a lot about the chatbots, and I built the chatbot, which was really useful and gain a lot of attraction to the audience.
Awesome, man. Congratulations. And Jeff? You're the big influencer in Miami, big man of town. Lucky to have you here.
Thanks. I'm just here to meet people, learn something about crypto that I didn't already know, maybe learn about some small projects, gain some perspective about some people who've been in the space for a long time, maybe even some people who haven't been in the space for a long time.
You want to introduce your company?
I co-founded Blockwolf.com. We provide cryptocurrency research for retail and institutional investors.
It's awesome, man. Well, thanks. So we're here at Crypto Mondays US Miami edition. So introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Lance and I'm delighted to be here because I know a lot of very intelligent, inspiring people here that have done great things and are doing great things in the crypto arena. I work with a company that actually covers and is able to provide services in every aspect of crypto, from exchange to crypto banking to anything that you can imagine on the internet to move money, to move coins. So delighted to be here, and I'll hand it over to my friend Brian.
Hi, I'm Brian Valero, run the Florida Alternative Investment Association. I'm actually one of the organizers of Crypto Monday. I want to thank everybody for coming out. The Florida Alternative Investment Association is a 501c6. that we focus on now is blockchain and cryptocurrency. So I encourage you all to attend our event in April. It's called the ABC Forum. That's for AI, blockchain, and crypto.
Great. Yeah, we did a big AI and blockchain event for US Miami 3 weeks ago at the Venture Cafe.
Was that blockchain too?
Yeah, we filmed it in VR like we're doing here, so you just watch it. But it's cool. I know this dude.
Thanks for hosting. My name is Garrett, and I am a blockchain analyst at a supply chain startup called Citizen User, and we're a business-to-business platform. Wearing a beta block shirt, but not part of my organization. We have two main components: marketplace and a track and trace solution. So trying to get this end-to-end supply chain visibility through our platform. Thanks.
Welcome. Cool. We had the man of the hour here. Sam. Here. All right. Cool. All right. Cut.
Hi, I'm Amy Isterson, and I have the North American Bitcoin Conference. So I got involved in this because I know our event producer, and I'm also marrying someone that's involved in this, so it kind of just worked out.
Wow. So you're kind of your Bitcoin spouse or EOS spouse.
Well, okay, let me backtrack. I actually was the one that was interested in it, and then I got him involved because he was a computer science major, so I was like, hey, you should know something about this. So that's kind of how this all came about. But we have our event coming up in January here in Miami at the James L. Knight Center. It's January 16, 17, 18. Last year it was a blowout, completely sold out, and this year we're expecting one thing. So we'll have everyone there.
Well, welcome, guys. All right. Cut.
Hi, how's it going? My name is Gary Jones, and I'm the co-founder of United Coin. Yes, we coin.
My name is Megan Howard. I'm about social media marketing. So follow us on @United_Coin.
Cool. So how'd you guys get into blockchain and crypto?
So in 2013, I heard about cryptocurrency on the radio. I pulled over on the side of the highway and I sat there for 3 hours and learned about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. And ever since then, I've been trading, mining, and buying cryptocurrency.
How'd you get into crypto?
Actually, this is my husband, so I learned a lot of stuff from him. And I just recently started to look more into it, being a part of it. So it's pretty cool.
Awesome. Cool. Well, welcome.
My name is Shanika. I sell this card.
So how did you guys get interested in blockchain or cryptocurrency? Or is this your first time hearing about it?
This is my first time doing it, Michael Anderson.
We've been aiming for since the beginning, but we're integrating it, with extra secrets and making sure that it's quick to more get into the pace and scale that this could lead to.
Awesome. You're welcome. Cut.
Yes? Okay, fantastic. Once again, welcome to Crypto Mondays. Round of applause for Crypto Mondays. I see everyone here believes in the future, which is amazing, and I'm so happy to be amongst so many people who are like-minded and very open and willing to network and learn. As you know, this is something that happens every month, and this young lady right here is the reason why it all happens. Everybody needs to clap for Erica. Very awesome. So as always, this is an educational experience that you will have tonight. Please hold your questions to the end. Erica is going to give you guys some really awesome information. Welcome. And we will continue to have these next year and the year after that, and it's going to be huge, guys.
Awesome. So welcome to Crypto Mondays. For anybody that's new here, there's a lot of newcomers. Just to give you some background information, Crypto Mondays is a global brand. So 26 different cities, 10 different countries, and you are at the Miami location. And I just want to let you know, Miami obviously is building as the tech hub for the United States, and specifically in blockchain. I just came back from New York yesterday, and we were talking to some pretty big players up there, and a lot of them are interested in investing here in Miami as the door to Latin America, so you guys are in the right place. One thing I want to do is I want to give a shout out to Adrian Basha. He's not here right now, but he is the person who, he's the editor for, or the producer for CNBC Crypto Trader. If you guys get a chance to meet him tonight, you should. He's really instrumental in making sure that Miami becomes a global hub everywhere he goes. Filming CNBC Crypto Trader with Crypto Man Rand, he definitely shills Miami. Not shills, but... Okay, so the first person that we're going to have two speakers tonight. The first person is Pravi. So Pravi recently won an award for VR stuff at a conference that was not related to blockchain. He's going to talk about why it's important to attend conferences when you're in tech that are not related to blockchain, but give it up for Pravi.
Guys, so I'm Pravi Yalamachi. Pravi is my online brand, and Pravi is my nickname. It's a Roshar site, so you can call me what you want. You know, it doesn't worry about it. Anyway, so I'm the co-founder of EOS Miami, but what we're talking about this weekend, actually, if Slavo stands up, he's actually the man of the hour. So EOS Miami is the local Miami community for EOS enthusiasts. We entered 2 teams in the Comcast NBC Universal Hackathon this weekend. And it's the largest hackathon in Miami history. And we actually, our 2 teams both won first prize. So the goal was not just to win, but to get blockchain mainstream, crypto mainstream. Rather than just having our own conferences, we wanted to enter teams in a generic tech conference. And the fact that we won actually showed that blockchain is going mainstream, crypto is going mainstream. That's the only way it will happen, so that was our goal. So Slavo won the Google Cloud Award, so he's actually being flown out to Google Silicon Valley for an interview at Google. So it was actually a big deal to win these. So it was really something we were trying to do for the blockchain community. So EOS Miami, our website is eos.miami. It's basically for if you're a crypto entrepreneur or a programmer. All of our workshops are all technically based. We don't give investment advice. And we're trying to just make each other successful for our DApps. So we've had some recent successes. One of our DApps is featured on Fox Business TV. Another one of our co-founders of EOS Miami got a job with Block One in Virginia. Another one is in LA now. So we're kind of trying to be more like the PayPal Mafia, but we started at EOS Miami, but now wherever you go in the world, right? And we hope we give you good education and good experience, good networking. So that's who we are. Question?
What was the winning solution proposed in the hackathon?
Well, why don't you got Slava right there. Why don't you talk about your project? It's on the website too. We actually, if you go to mytransmedia.com, all of our EOS Miami events, they're all filmed in virtual reality. So we did an AI blockchain event. We did a blockchain gaming event. Everything blockchain related, we have some segment of it so people can come. And so we basically, for the blockchain gaming, we invite all the game developer groups to learn how to create a blockchain game.
So can you tell them, because tonight's event is actually filming in virtual reality. I don't know if you guys have ever been filmed in virtual reality before, but can you tell them where they can find this video if they want to watch it later?
Yeah, you can go to eos.miami, and you can go to that's a link to our meetup. So they can go tonight, I'll put the link in there. It's all on YouTube. You can go directly to mytransmedia.com. It's our YouTube website. But you can see this event and obviously every other blockchain workshop that we've done this year, including we did one with the winners of the Emerge America's Pitbull Blockchain Hackathon. I'm sure you guys have probably seen some of this stuff, like Sam, the other speaker tonight, accidentally wandered into our meetup because we try to make it the fun crypto group. We work hard, play hard type thing, the generic term. So we had everyone wear unicorn horns, right? So people at bachelorette parties are all hanging out with us in bachelor, but it's really but then that's a way to make programming fun, right? We're kind of tricking you into learning something, and Sam wandered in accidentally, so what are these unicorn dudes doing around here? So
I wasn't sure if I was in some sexual thing going on.
Yeah, something. We did the Windward Brewing Company. We did the Windward Brewing virtual. We did a tour going into VR, so you can see the secret tour. No one's ever filmed that tour before. It's on our website. So
yeah, you can check out the videos at eos.miami for tonight.
Yeah, definitely can come to if you want to learn AI blockchain, gaming blockchain, anything technically related, or maybe a DApp. We're trying to attract entrepreneurs and programmers. So the meetups are a tip of the iceberg. We're creating open source projects. We create the most popular multi-chain EOS wallet. So really heavily technical. It's not just networking. So
guys are welcome.
Thanks. Okay, so just a couple housekeeping items before we introduce our main speaker tonight. The first thing is Crypto Mondays, our next social session is not going to be at the cigar bar. I know a lot of people told me like they don't like the smell of it or whatever, but we're moving it somewhere else, so just stay tuned on meetup.com. And actually, this right here, this QR code at the top right, if you guys aren't connected on meetup.com, pull up your phones. iPhones now have a way to where if you pull up your camera, it automatically links to a QR code. It's the future, you guys. It's happening on all of our phones. So the one on the top right is if you're not in the Crypto Mondays Miami meetup. This one down here is if you're not part of the Telegram. So the Telegram is a really good way to stay up to date on events that are happening in the week, like not just Crypto Mondays, but all crypto events. So, you know, I'll have it up later if it doesn't work from far away. The next thing is on December 6th at Venture Cafe. I'm hosting a panel, and it's like a VC panel. So it's a free event. I know a lot of you guys are looking for funding, but it'd be good to come out to. The founder of the Ethereum Classic Dev team is going to be there. Chris Enzi of Riot Blockchain, which is traded on the NASDAQ, will also be there. And the topic of it is blockchain and crypto, a recap of 2018 and an outlook for 2019. And then the last thing is, if you guys didn't put your business cards in that red bucket for a raffle ticket, please do so before we do the raffle, but you will win a free ticket to the North American Bitcoin Conference in Miami in January, and those tickets are like $850, so that's a pretty cool free ticket. And also, if you don't win and you want discount codes, join the Telegram group, they're in there. So, without further ado, I just want to introduce our speaker for tonight. He is our friendly neighborhood dev shop. He's an educator and he's a friend. And if you need a blockchain project built, Bushido is the way to go. This is Sam Havasi. You want to stand, Sam? Sam. So Sam is a software engineer and president of Bushido Labs, Miami's blockchain firm. He's a technologist and a community builder, and he's playing his part in revamping Miami into an epicenter for tech innovation and application. He has a background in neuroscience from the University of Miami's Miller School of Medicine, and he has a bachelor's degree in economics from Loyola University in Chicago. He is a WinCode graduate and was a business journalist at the Miami Herald. So Sam will teach you some cool stuff tonight. Come on, Sam. Yeah, your passion.
You go to present, I think it's on the left, right? Hi everyone, thanks for coming. I'm a little bit disheveled. I had to run from, you guys know 8Base, Albert Santolo. I was over on his radio show. He's got a radio show. So this is a complicated topic, obviously, which is why you're all here. I just did this presentation at Florida State University. They have a collegiate blockchain conference. And I tried to make it not as technical, but a little bit technical to do it justice. And afterwards, I got feedback that it was way over people's heads. So Erica told me to make this a little bit more business. So I'm going to do my best. Bear with me. I do typically talk fast. It's not because I want to talk fast. It's unfortunate. That's how I am. Just an intro. My name's Sam. Like Erica said, background econ, neuroscience, and comp sci. You can email me at sam@bushidolab.com. I'm readily accessible. And I'm on Twitter at Sam Havasi. Our office is in Wynwood, by the way, so if you're in the area, definitely shoot me an email. You're welcome to come by see our space. I do call ourselves a lab because we really are a bunch of crazy engineers in one room. We're a team of 7, and we're all engineers, including myself. So what we do at Bushido, give you guys some fundamental ground to work on. We do protocol development, blockchain applications, blockchain integrations, token development and issuance, but also blockchain and digital asset consulting services. So if you're thinking about, my business may need blockchain, but you're not really sure, you've heard the term blockchain but don't really know if it applies to you, we can kind of help you make sense of that and give you some sort of guidance. So the tech stack that we generally use, we operate and we build on Bitcoin, which is in Bitcoin script. We also are building some applications on the Lightning Network, which is their second layer protocol meant for payments. We also work in Ethereum, of course, in a language called Solidity, and we do enterprise-based work in Hyperledger, which is in Fabric and Composer. I also teach cryptocurrency and blockchain development at Miami-Dade College. So keep a lookout for them. They're trying to make a blockchain accredited course for fall 2019.
Yeah, we were guest speakers at his workshop.
Yeah.
US Miami.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Yeah,
Great,
it's
great
fun.
students.
We're trying to make a blockchain lab, so I'm heading that initiative. I do free smart contract workshops, so look at Bushido or Google it. You may see an event coming up pretty soon for just smart contract development. We also do work with local schools. If you guys haven't heard of Learn 01, they're over on 28th Street in Wynwood. They basically teach 12-year-olds how to make Windows servers, which is insane. So we come in and help them on like the crypto side, explaining what blockchain is. All right, so again, my job tonight is difficult, and it's to explain what blockchain is, which is just really, really general and very broad and very complicated. So the first thing we need to do is figure out what the questions are, right? So what are the questions? Is it what is Bitcoin, or is it Bitcoin versus blockchain, or is it Bitcoin versus cryptocurrency versus blockchain? Just a show of hands, when you typically hear of blockchain, do you guys, how many of you just think of blockchain itself when you hear blockchain? Only blockchain by itself. Okay. And how many of you think of Bitcoin when you hear the term blockchain? Okay. Okay. So to understand how blockchain, to understand blockchain and how businesses can apply it, we really need to go back to the basics. And the basics in this case is Bitcoin. Bitcoin is kind of a weird thing to introduce when you're talking about blockchain, because depending on your audience, they may have sort of a taboo, or they may attribute a taboo connotation towards Bitcoin, or they may think it's an interesting technology. But often when I speak to business people, they simply just think of blockchain as purely blockchain, extracted from Bitcoin, and almost divorced from it. But I do think it's important to talk about kind of how this technology was made, what its initial purpose was, and what companies are doing now to try and apply the same underlying tech. The main thing you typically hear is that Bitcoin is the first application of blockchain, and blockchain is just the underlying technology that runs it. That's true and it's false, and I'm kind of going to hopefully be able to explain why that is. What I'm going to show you today isn't 100% technically accurate, but it's accurate enough for you to get an understanding. Okay? So what makes up Bitcoin for the most part is money, it's a reserve currency, it's an environment for transaction confirmation, it's an environment for consensus on the confirmation of those transactions, and then you have the blockchain that kind of floats around and really kind of makes things possible. Is a good way to kind of lay the fundamentals. The reason why this is a complicated space to explain is that blockchain, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin technologies, whatever you want to call it, is a combination of economics, computer science, and game theory. So it takes a very specific group of people that really do understand the principles of those different aspects and are able to manipulate. So most people that I speak to in the space are developers that are building on these technologies do have a pretty good understanding of what the financial world looks like, but also how computer science can disrupt that on a very, very low level. So let's start with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is either a store of value or a medium of exchange for the most part, right? Bitcoin is an economic argument. It's the idea that governments shouldn't control your issuance of money. The line that has become my favorite that I always use is that Bitcoin's argument is that money is not a product of the state, but rather it's a product of the market, which is kind of weird. So you get these like crypto-anarchic sort of elements that are part of this. When I go to conferences, it's usually, and now it's become a mix of like full-on anarchists, but also Wall Street execs. And it's strange that you can actually compromise the two, but in some instances you actually can't. So Bitcoin is basically supposed to be sound money, which is money that has purchasing power determined by markets, independent and completely divorced from political parties or any sort of governmental state actors. That's what Bitcoin does. It is anarchic sort of by definition. There's an author of a book called Mastering Bitcoin that I recommend everyone to read. It is technical, but it's not deeply technical, so even if you're not a computer programmer or if you've never seen a line of code, you should be able to understand the fundamentals of what's going on from that book. But the author's name is Andreas Antonopoulos, and he's brought up this kind of principle which is called infrastructure inversion. So what that means is whenever you have a disrupting technology, and Bitcoin and blockchain is a disrupting technology, it typically needs to ride on and be sustained by the technology it's going to replace, right? And then there's an inversion. So think horses and cars. When cars were first developed, the only people using cars were crazy engineers and really rich people, right? So translate that to now, like look at me and my company, crazy engineers, we are insane. But then you also have our clients, which are the richer people. There was no infrastructure to maintain cars when cars were developed. Roads weren't paved. there weren't traffic lights, so there weren't gas stations. So what if your car ran out of gas in the middle of your journey? What were you supposed to do, right? You can kind of think of electric cars in this sense too. What happens is it's sustained on the old infrastructure, so on dirt roads, on basically, cars are two-wheel drive and horses are kind of like four-leg drive, so they can do different things cars can't do. So their success is definitely more conducive to the environment they're in. But over time, once the infrastructure is built for the new technology, there's an inversion, and maintaining the old technology on the new one is almost trivial. So telecom and the internet, back when modems were the thing, and I remember that, we tried to throw data onto telecommunication lines, which was incredibly inefficient and incredibly slow and very expensive. But when the flip happened, and when telecom companies realized they were wrong, when there was an infrastructure inversion, maintaining the old infrastructure on the new one was trivial. Putting a voice telecommunication line on the internet didn't really cost much. It was very seamlessly done, and telecom companies effectively became internet companies at that point. In terms of Bitcoin and blockchain, I see something similar happening with global bank settlements, right? So in Bitcoin, you're able to transact with anyone seamlessly without any sort of third party in a transaction confirmation environment. And replicating or maintaining the old infrastructure, which is traditional banking, is trivial on Bitcoin, right? I mean, it's instant. If Scott and I are sending money to each other, it happens right there and it's done. If you want to put some kind of middleman in the picture and tell us to wait 3 to 5 days and charge $45 per transaction, you can replicate that on Bitcoin without a problem. So that takes, though, about 15 to 20 years. But it is a process, and it does have precedence back in history. So I always think of humans as being cyclical. We do the same things over and over again. We simply don't really know how to learn from our mistakes. But if you want to see how the future is going to play out, usually you just have to look at history. An example of what Bitcoin does and why it's so important and why Americans have a hard time understanding its value is that we haven't seen hyperinflation. I'm going to explain how all this works on a technical level in a second, but we haven't seen our government be completely irresponsible with printing money. Right now, I don't know if you know, and I have a hard time explaining this to educated people because I feel like everyone should know this, but so some visuals. So this effectively is Bitcoin, right? I pulled this from a Medium article that I can send you all the links to later. But this is Bitcoin. So these are different nodes, and a node is, let's keep it simple, a node is a person. A node is someone running Bitcoin. A node is someone that has an entire copy of the Bitcoin ledger and is checking everything that's getting sent to it against that own copy of the ledger, right? So to give you an example, if this guy pulled this out, if this guy tries to send an invalid transaction, let's say you're a computer scientist, you're going to try and make up that you have this many Bitcoin and you want to send it to these people. That's invalid by everyone else's copy because no one else has a copy of you having 100 Bitcoin. Only you just made it up. So what you do is you send that transaction to the network. What happens is you're automatically connected, in Bitcoin's case, to 8 different nodes. Okay? They're going to check your transaction or the transaction you're trying to send to them against their own copy. And they're going to realize that's invalid. That's not a valid transaction. But they're not going to send it past the network. So this is kind of the security consensus model where if you even try to corrupt or hack the network, you can't because it would never break the surface. So from a security model, this is what Bitcoin looks like, where it's very difficult to compromise. You would have to have an insane amount of computing power, or you would have to basically run 51% of this whole network to compromise it, which is incredibly capital intensive, but also difficult to maintain because you have to keep doing that over time. To show you how miners work, these are what are called ASICs in the Bitcoin network. So they do what's called proof of work. How many of you know what proof of work is, by any chance? Okay, cool. So that's the process of making it hard to make more of anything, where a miner has to basically show or prove that they expended tons of resources. It costs them a lot of money to validate your transaction because it needs to be hard. It needs to be expensive. Not anyone can do it. So these are called ASIC miners. They're attached to a node. They send their transactions through. It propagates to the network, and everyone can see the transactions. Everyone's happy. Everyone runs it against their ledger, and there's consensus. Everyone agrees that these transactions are confirmed. The miners have done the work to actually prove that they added the transactions, and then the nodes validate that against their own ledger. Mining pools. So one of the main criticisms with Bitcoin, for the most part, is is how slow it is. So you guys know it's about 10 minutes. It's 10 minutes a block, right? So for Visa's transaction throughput, it's incredibly slow. I can't really buy coffee with Bitcoin now, for the most part, because it's so inefficient. But at the same time, what's important to realize is that Bitcoin's value proposition is not meant for you to buy coffee. Bitcoin's value proposition is for international, or to replace the international settlement layer for banks. So if a bank wants to consolidate the fact that they've loaned this much money to another bank, typically what they used to do back in the day was send gold to each other, right? And gold is incredibly difficult to send. Gold is very expensive, and it's hard to secure gold. So Bitcoin replaces that from a secure kind of consensus layer, right? If a bank wants to validate something with another bank, they would do so using Bitcoin's base layer. To make it more accessible for everyone else, to make it relevant for Scott or relevant for probably relevant for anyone else to actually use Bitcoin, they've developed what are called scaling solutions, right? So again, Bitcoin isn't competing with Visa. Bitcoin isn't competing with PayPal. Bitcoin is competing with international banking infrastructure at large. What does compete with PayPal, what does compete with Visa, and what's going to make it more, tangible for people like us to use on a daily basis, are what are called layer 2 solutions. So I'm giving you kind of the vocab to be able to have a conversation with someone about this. So a layer 2 solution, which is in Bitcoin's case is called Lightning Network, is basically the second layer. I think I have is the second layer. So this is your settlement layer. This is the 10-minute mining Bitcoin. It's incredibly slow. It's meant for miners. You've only heard about it because people have, you've heard about it in passing. You're not involved in this layer. But in order for Bitcoin to take off in terms of buying things with it, in terms of keeping a truly censorship-resistant network going, there's a layer 2, which is the one that competes with Visa and PayPal. So you have basically dedicated payment channels where Scott and I can send money to each other with almost no consolidation to the base network, but we're able to send small micropayments to each other. Things like coffee, things like like a loan that I owe Scott, something small that doesn't need to be consolidated to Bitcoin's mining base layer because that takes way too much time. The point is that what I want to show you are the possibilities of a blockchain. It's not just one layer, it's not just one part, it's not one kind of monolithic aspect. It's more like an internet. It's more like things that you can build on top of it. People ask me a lot, like, what phase in this technology are we at? What I tell them is, I feel that we're at 93, 94 of the .com boom, where if you guys saw, the ICO craze in 2017, you saw some pretty crazy things people were trying to make, right? Things that, for the most part, or in my experience, for the most part, didn't really make sense. But that's because it's kind of like the equivalent of saying, I want to make Netflix back in like 94, right? Which is, okay, I can see what you're saying, but the idea of video streaming is way too early on. Like, the infrastructure is big. So what I want to show you here is just that it's still nascent. We're developing the actual protocol layer. This is like a new internet in a sense, with a monetary value attached to it. So, Bitcoin itself may be slow, and Bitcoin itself may be inefficient to maintain, thousands of transactions a second, but there are layers on top of the base Bitcoin infrastructure that we can build to facilitate that and to make it more convenient for us to actually use it as a payment layer or as a whatever sort of digital asset layer. Now, Erica asked me to keep this more enterprise and more business focused. So now we'll focus on the enterprise kind of business application of just the blockchain part of consensus. Now, I do want to note, when we talk about blockchain and when you hear about different blockchain applications and companies making blockchains or companies using blockchains, there's a spectrum, right? And the spectrum really goes, and I call it security to speed, but it truly is decentralization to centralization. So how many of you have heard of decentralization? Probably, yeah, the majority. That's kind of a new term. I mean, decentralization isn't itself a new term, but people now applying it to business use cases is now a new term. Decentralization comes at a cost. Everything is a trade-off. So if your network is fully decentralized, meaning there is no central entity dictating or controlling the network, then you're sacrificing something. And typically you're sacrificing speed. In the blockchain space, you always, I mean not always, I don't want to talk about absolutes, but you typically hear about decentralization as this evil force for the most part, right? But the issue is that centralization is incredibly efficient. Most companies should be centralized because you can simply do a lot more with a centralized infrastructure. A decentralized infrastructure is a very specific use case like the one I just laid out for you, which is a censorship-resistant, anarchic layer that has a value attributed to it that no state or central authority controls because it needs to be a peer-to-peer network purely derived from the market, not the state. So if you look at the spectrum, you have Bitcoin on the extreme, which is, yeah, it's slow, it's hard to understand, people aren't really going to use it right now. But on the other side, you have purely centralized databases that are that lack the security aspects of Bitcoin, because if someone breaks into your database or compromises your own central network, then you're screwed. But it's incredibly fast. That side is very slow. Somewhere on the spectrum, there are different business use cases. And what I do with my clients is I consult with them on what their business use case needs. So if you have a closed consortium, let's say, of different airlines, a Spirit, American, Delta, or whatever else, they do have a legitimate case for a type of blockchain, okay? And I do want to qualify the fact that a distributed database is nothing new. It's simply the idea of attaching a consensus layer to that distributed database is kind of the novel concept here. So it's kind of a dance between finding out exactly what data you need to send to everyone else in your network and how much you need to trust them. Bitcoin's argument is you don't trust anyone. You're trusting the protocol, and you're trusting the economic incentives of the people involved that are using that protocol. But in the example of the airlines, you can probably trust to a certain extent that Spirit isn't going to do anything drastic to mess with your data, but at the same time, you need to have certain fail-safes against that as well. So it isn't a trustless environment the way Bitcoin is, but a closed consortium blockchain of airlines that can transmit different data or different ticketing results, or in hospitality, for instance, for different rates that they are charging for their rooms. You don't need to have that same trustless, decentralized security layer, but you can have kind of an in-between, a sort of what I call a Frankenstein combination of it that allows you to send data quicker versus Bitcoin. We have Adrian in the room that Erica talked about last time. If you guys want to know what he looks like, he's there, and you guys are blushing. Adrian, again, is a producer for Crypto Trader, so he's a great guy to know, by the way. So, business networks. So, now I'm going to make a case which is not popular in the crypto Bitcoin space, but a case for enterprise application of blockchain technology. Now remember, like I said in the beginning, if you go to these conferences, you meet the anarchists who say that this is all bullshit, then you meet the people on Wall Street who say, well, let's try and figure out how we can actually use blockchain. And I try and make everyone happy, so I'm going to explain why there are certain legitimate applications of this and what it looks like. So businesses need to be connected, right? So the internet allows you to be connected. Now the problem is connecting your data and not being stuck in a data silo. So, Facebook is doing egregious things with their data, and we know that. But now with blockchain, we can probably introduce some sort of right of ownership to your digital data that you weren't able to have before. One of the coolest aspects of Bitcoin that I love talking about is the unbanked. So the majority of the world is unbanked, right? You talk about people in Africa, people in the Middle East, people in South Asia, they don't have bank accounts. And at the same time, the reason why we have banks in the first place is because they're custodians of our assets, right? Now we're able to be our own custodians. So in Bitcoin, by having what's called a public-private key pair, you have a public key, which is just like an email address. You give it to anyone, and they can send you whatever they want to that email address. It's public. You also have your email password, which allows you to log into your email address and basically sign off on emails you send. Only the person that has your email password can actually send emails on your behalf. Same thing in Bitcoin. Your private key is your right of ownership of those assets. So right now, we have a very primitive understanding of Bitcoin as a monetary value and a unit of exchange, and that is our asset. But land titles, your digital identity, almost anything can be considered an asset and tied to in a digital form using Bitcoin or using a blockchain. So businesses now are trying to take that same model and apply it to what facilitates their own needs. So everyone's connected. Wealth can be generated and flown across different people, or across different networks or different stakeholders within your network in exchange for goods or services. And your market can either be public, like Bitcoin, or it can be private, like airline or a supply chain industry. So assets are, typically there are two fundamental types of assets. There's tangible and intangible. Tangible is, something you can touch, like gold or a house. And intangible is security, a mortgage, equity in a company. intellectual patents, digital rights, music. I'm not going to get into cash because that gets a little bit tricky. Those are assets. Now, assets are typically recorded on a ledger. They're recorded on a ledger of some type. Now, the cool thing with blockchain is that it introduces the idea of triple entry accounting, right? Or triple entry bookkeeping. I'm sorry, I'm not an accountant. I can't remember the actual term. But we had double entry bookkeeping. Basically, when the printing press came about, you can have a copy of your own ledger of what you have, or what your assets are and your liabilities, what your balance sheet looks like, and then someone else can have their own copy, and later on you consolidate. But now you have a trusted, and trust and trustless are kind of tricky terms in this space, because Bitcoin is trustless, but the ledger is trusted. If that makes sense. So in triple entry accounting, which is what blockchain is, you now have a trusted resource, a trusted third party somewhere that no one controls, that is your failsafe, that is your third person, your third entity, your third whatever, that you can reconcile your own copy of a ledger and someone else's copy of a ledger. So, in Bitcoin that happens very quickly, and that happens between people that don't know each other. But in a closed enterprise application of blockchain, that can happen between people that know each other and people that have or know certain things about their businesses, or certain things about the type of data, or the data on clients that they're actually transferring to or against. So in business terms, a blockchain basically is a shared, replicated, permissioned ledger. Shared in the sense that everyone has the same copy of whatever asset or whatever you want to fill in. They have the same copy. It's replicated because it's replicated across different stakeholders. It's permissioned because Spirit's not going to let some random airline they don't know come in the picture, or some random entity they don't know, which introduces security concerns as well. And it's a ledger because everyone has a copy of it. So an example of a modern day sort of audit and compliance diagram is this, where you have your own internal, your business participants who are sending data to each other, and they're sending it very carefully. They're only sending what they want to send. So if Bank of America is sending information at Chase, they're only going to send the information that they think is relevant, and they're not going to send any more, and rightfully so. However, when you introduce an insurer record or an auditor or a regulator to that environment, they now have to consolidate not only participant B's record, but also A's, I don't have C, but also it's the C. So it introduces inefficiencies, because now you have to talk to 4 different people to try and get the same idea of what's going on. It's expensive, it's vulnerable, and again, it's inefficient. There's so much redundancies, right? So having like a notary, and for someone who's, I guess I'm in the millennial space, fortunately or unfortunately, it seems almost just nonsensical. But if you have a blockchain, or some kind of blockchain application that everyone is a part of, now your auditor no longer really needs to be in the picture, or they don't have to do as much work as before. So we're working with Oracle, for instance, on an audit and compliance solution to do just that. So we're looking at software asset management. What happens is Oracle, in this case, sells a license to say Microsoft. They sell it to Marriott, for instance. When they sell that license, they sell, let's say, 300 copies of this type of Java license. Okay. What typically happens in Marriott is they take those 300 Java licenses and they give it to 500 people, right? Because they have software. People think software is kind of free. Oracle comes in 3 years later, checks the records, and sees, oh, Marriott didn't just give it to those 300 people. They gave it to 500 people instead, because they were able to replicate or able to change it. The beauty with the blockchain now, and what we're building for them with Hyperledger Fabric, is the ability to consistently get the same information from the different computers that are on their network, and reliably maintain that in a ledger, not only on Oracle's side, but also on their client side, so also on Marriott's side. So everyone now is on the same page. Everyone now has the exact same ledger and is in consensus over what they have. Now back to the spectrum, that's more centralized, meaning one of the participants, let's say Oracle, wants to be a malicious actor and change some of the data and try and make more money off of Marriott, and say, no, instead of 500 people, you actually gave this to 800 people, right? So you have to be creative in how you determine what trust looks like, how you determine what a write-only access to your ledger looks like, how you determine who can do what in your network. You need to be creative with it. But the potential and the possibility of having a trusted third party that is not an entity, but rather simply a ledger that's maintained by everyone, is kind of a game changer. Because now we can do a lot of different creative things. And I do want to reiterate, the kind of beauty of this space is we can't really understand the beauty and the actual application of this space yet. Sort of like when the internet came about, I would never have thought that people would be getting into random people's cars and going from point A to point B, but now we have Uber, right? So it's a little bit of a mixed bag, where you try and figure out what people are going to be willing to do, what they're willing to sacrifice, combining with the technological capabilities that we have, which is this. So I invite you not to be kind of short-sighted and saying, well, you know, this is limited by definition right now, which it is, but in the long term, in 10 to 15 years, the applications and the possibilities of what we can do with this, I don't even know how to actually address it, and I don't think anyone really does yet. It's yet to be seen. It's how technology adapts. So the advantages: consensus, provenance, immutability, finality. Consensus in that you can determine how consensus is achieved. You can determine, kind of like by a gossip protocol, what truth actually is in your network. Who you determine can have, you know, let's say in a permission network you determine that one company has a greater right of validation of transactions, or has a greater say than another company in terms of what's actually right and what's actually wrong in the ledger. You can get creative with that, and it depends on the business use case. So if you go to supply chain, you know, IBM is working with Maersk right now on a solution called trade lines. So they have to be creative in the fact that the person that's the orange picker in their orange farm can have a certain read-only or write-only access to the blockchain, but Maersk itself can dictate and determine what consensus looks like among all the participants and determine what the data looks like on the actual blockchain. Provenance is also huge. Provenance is the idea that you can track something from inception to where you have it now. How many of you saw CryptoKitties? Did you guys saw CryptoKitties? Yeah, right? Kind of crazy. So CryptoKitties, I was going to pull it up, but I won't do it. CryptoKitties was basically they were tokens on top of Ethereum. Ethereum is another blockchain. They made tokens on top of Ethereum that were pictures of digital cats, like actual pictures, right? People could own these tokens that represented these digital cats, right? The picture wasn't in the token, but the picture was a representation of which cat it was. And I'm being literal, it was a digital cat. Over 4 weeks, $12 million was transferred over these cats. Which is insane, because they're digital cats. And $12 million is a lot of money, in my opinion, for those cats. So I spent a lot of time trying to figure out why someone would do that, what the advantage of that was, and I kind of came to the conclusion that, well, A, it's scarce. You can, well, actually, it's entirely scarcity that's determined and dictated by provenance, which is that you can verifiably prove that you bought this scarce cat that only like 3 people have on this network. You can show on the blockchain that I bought it at this point. There's 3 of them. I bought it from this person, he bought it from that person, and it was made on the blockchain at this time and date. And you have a hard time doing that with art, for instance. So if you want to make a really simple analogy, you know, counterfeiting art is a huge problem. And I'm not an art curator at all, so I'm not speaking from experience. But I know and I've been told that sure where blockchain, where Bitcoin, where cryptocurrencies are going to fit on this scale. I do think it will be a combination of reach new markets and regulatory compliance. The reduced cost right now isn't exactly there in the short term, but these are the different considerations a business and enterprise, a business or an enterprise takes whenever they decide to hire a new person, whenever they decide to take on a new technology, or whenever they decide to do any kind of initiative that's going to affect their bottom line. These are what they look at. So when they're looking at blockchain, they're trying to see where does blockchain fit into these 4 considerations, and does it fit into multiple? Now again, not all blockchain scenarios require blockchain called into service. So an example scenario, if you have a reference or a shared reference data, the whole point of that is consensus. So again, a distributed database is nothing new. Consensus on the distributed database in a secure cryptographic environment, that's what's new. Supply chain is with provenance. You want to know when your tomato was grown, where it was grown, who it changed hands to, and how you have it right now. Audit and compliance is immutability. So back to the Oracle example, I want to know for a fact that this computer downloaded my Java license and it didn't do it to anyone else's, and I can prove that because it's directly tied in, and there's a tracker involved with the data that's coming in from that software to my blockchain, so I know no one can change it. And that's the other aspect of blockchain is the immutability of it. The fact that there is a consensus on a ledger means that no one can actually alter it or change it. So when I showed you the diagram of Bitcoin, or the whole network as a whole, if you, like I said, if you try and send an invalid transaction, no one else will accept it because they have a copy of the ledger themselves, and they can check and see, well, I don't have this transaction you're trying to send to me. It's not part of my network. It's not part of my ledger. And finality is part of the same thing of immutability, but the example there is a letter of credit. So for supply chain, so you have, I guess you have an increased trust, but again, it's back to problem. So when a shipping container comes to the port, and IBM with Maersk now, I think, have about 20 different ports signed up using their blockchain. When you can prove the entire history of whatever good or service, good in this case, you're actually receiving. And you can then imagine the insurance scenarios that are involved with that too. So, I mean, you probably wouldn't have to have any kind of legitimate or very expensive type of insurance policy because you can actually prove by your network that this was done at this point and now I have it here. Auditing compliance, do that. Letters of credit. So a bank handling letters of credit wants to offer them to a wide range of clients. They do that by offering a common ledger of letters of credit. So everyone, again, has the same record of everything that everyone is involved in that's involved in your network or in your blockchain or in your business. So future use cases, again, the financial sector, there's plenty. Mortgages, we have Eli here from BitFinance. So if you haven't heard of BitFinance, they're an incredible company, local to Miami, doing a lot in the kind of financial side of the network. So if you want to talk to him later, he's back there, bottom to your right. Insurance. So one of the things we talk about a lot, especially in the developing world, are land titles. So title insurance for your home. I'm not a homeowner, but I learned about it later on. You have to get title insurance, right? Or is it's called title insurance, right? For your home to make sure that you can actually sell it or buy it? Yeah. It's not really insurance. You're just paying for a service to make sure that the person who sold it to you has the right to sell it to you, which is a little bit insane. So if you had a record that this person bought it at this point from this person, and on and on and on, title insurance is gone. So these are the kind of creative things we can do in the short term. And then, I guess in terms of in different scenarios or examples, or the reason why you want to do whatever you want to do, proof of audit largely will probably come from regulatory compliance. Digital onboarding is to reach new markets, and a disintermediation is to reduce cost. So it's important that if you want to take out the middleman, it is cheaper to take out the middleman. You don't want to take out the middleman and it costs you more money, because that doesn't make any sense in your business. And then a real-time financial position is obviously to manage and to mitigate your risks, which a properly structured blockchain can also do. Now I touched on TradeLens a bit, but there's also Food Trust. So IBM is working with Walmart. I was at IBM I think 3 months ago giving a talk on kind of what enterprise blockchain looks like. They're working with Walmart on an initiative called Food Trust, which is just that. They find out where the food is made, who it's changed hands to, and if there is a bad batch like the like mad cow disease, they can actually trace it and find out what farm that came from because they now have a ledger. Don't assume, if you're not in the tech side of business, that the databases are talking to each other. Don't assume that things are orderly because they're not. I've spent time looking at the medical side of database kind of infrastructure, and I can tell you from firsthand experience, databases are all over the place. No one really has a clean record of what's going on across an industry. So the idea that you can actually pinpoint where something is coming from verifiably in a third-party kind of in a triple entry accounting system is novel and is incredibly powerful. So these are two very ready examples of what a major enterprise company is doing to facilitate a better environment for businesses to use blockchain. I think that's it. Yeah. I'll leave some time for questions. So if you guys have any questions.
Yeah, cool. Does anybody have questions? First, give it up for Sam. Questions? I'm going to help you answer them, Sam, just because it's always good to hear like different voices. Yeah. So, anybody have questions for him?
So, in many ways, the more people get interested in the blockchain and the whole concept, you know how we hear most of the time that we're living in a very populated world that it's becoming very difficult, that resources are getting tighter and tighter. It's only really is reversing that. And the more people, the more the currency becomes powerful.
Yeah.
So that's really the basic reversal that I'm hearing.
Yeah, I mean, and again, that goes back to my line, which is money is a product of the market. And the market's defined by how many people are involved in it. So the more people involved, the more people maintaining it, the more people that are active in it, it's going to dictate how well it does.
Yeah,
Which is tremendous for, like all the, the negative aspect that money has for certain regions of the world, for instance.
yeah, and if you think about what money is and what the idea of money is, I mean, take the U.S. dollar for example. We got off the gold standard in 1913, and it wasn't instant. It was like, I think.
1972.
Okay, well 1913 was when the Federal Reserve. No, yeah, and that was when we first started getting off the gold standard. So it was like 25% off, and then 50%, and then in 1970s when we were completely actually off the gold standard. So it was a progression that this happened, and that's the difference between the U.S. dollar and Bitcoin, is that Bitcoin has a limited supply. I mean, you can't change the number that is ever produced, and right now we really don't know how much money the Federal Reserve is printing. So the idea of having sound money really is the basis of blockchain.
Thank you so much. First of all, I came a little late, but your presentation was right on point, and it's always
He was at the hackathon too.
It's always good around to be around other people, true believers, I would say, and evangelists like yourself. My name is John. I live here and work for the government here in Miami, but I'm a part of a group that's based out of Hong Kong called Jimbo. We have a token that's a commodity linked to like precious stones, like ruby, sapphire, and topaz, and emeralds, based on a stone. My thing is this, with the kind of prevailing sentiment or more interaction with STA or securitized tokens for authenticity, more so than for the utility, where would you see practical integration or application here in the U.S. For alternative commodity-based assets, right? So when you mentioned the regular system, then you mentioned that was started in the 40s, and then you mentioned the going off the gold standard in the 72, and then now they have there's the petrodollar scheme. That is the thing that's holding up the value of the dollar, right? So Saudi Arabia prints it, they denominate it in dollars, that keeps America propped up. Right. What do you see as far as applications for crypto or blockchain assets as far as other commodities like petrol, gold, rubies, sapphire?
It kind of sounds like you're talking about the security token market, which is tokens that are backed by equity in a company, or they're backed by hard assets like tokens, gold. I mean, actually, I'm doing a security token project backed by aircraft on lease. I would say by aircraft on lease, and probably one of the best people. Ron is sitting right here. Sorry, Ron, shameless plug, but he's a good person. His company is probably the leader when it comes to issuing security tokens.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I was very, very skeptical of government regulation against Bitcoin and against cryptocurrencies and blockchain, and I still am, but I'm surprised as to how amicable they've been. We expected governments to be completely antithetical to this whole environment, but they've actually been pretty conducive, or introduced a conducive environment for their success. I mean, the short answer is a major economic disaster is obviously the most clear thing. And I do see us having an economic kind of downturn in 2 years or so. But really, Bitcoin's killer app may just be Venezuela. If Venezuela collapse, and they have to adopt Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, that's pretty much it. I mean, that's like a literal, tangible example of a country adopting crypto at this point.
And if you talk to any Venezuelans, they know Bitcoin and blockchain technology more than probably any other people group. Not only that, but like Turkey, right? So Turkey, their lira crashed like 27%. The price of Bitcoin in that country went up to all-time highs in that same day. So you're seeing people use Bitcoin as an exit to a failing financial system if their currency is failing. But in terms of of your question is another thing that we can do other than make the economy crash, because obviously that's going to hurt a lot more people. As much as we want Bitcoin to survive and we want it to be the global currency, what we can do is we have to host events like this, tell your friends about it. I mean, I'm working on some cool projects that really just educate people at a basic level, because it's hard to find a source of information for that. So
I think it needs to also be better UI, better UX.
Yeah.
The whole thing just needs to be fully integrated. A
And
good example, I think, would be what Stripe did to the financial system. I think it's really a good example to see what first tokenization could be.
But none of that is possible until layer 2. So keep your guys' eye out for Lightning, for Nimble, Wimble. Anyways, layer 2 is about to make this. Is going to make it easier. Go ahead, Steph.
I just want to add to answer his question, what I think needs to happen. Making it more palatable for normal people to get involved. Do you think my 63-year-old mother is going to invest a portion of her retirement in Bitcoin? No, because she doesn't know where to start. So with
But through Fidelity, she now can.
well, there you go. Ding, ding, ding. So that's one side of the market, but then the other is institutional money. And we're seeing that they're starting to get involved. And I think that we're going to see a bigger shift because they're going to bring the trust with them when these bigger guys start pouring, their money in the market.
Can I also add something else? Because we also talk about adoption. Like you were saying, the internet 94, it's all of the internet, everyone's saying that. If you look up adoption curves with Bitcoin, look at something like dishwashers, the timelines are so, when you think back to them, you think it happens so fast, but these things take time. There's so many different factors. Yeah, economic disaster would maybe kickstart us into investing, but I don't want to hope for that. It's just going to take time. There's a lot of smart people in space that are all actively working towards a goal, and it's just going to take time.
I mean, on that note, I just do want to make the point that back when the internet first started to proliferate in 92, 93, people were telling that it was an environment for drug dealers. It was an environment for child pedophiles. That was the narrative. You see the same narrative now. I mean, a lot of the time, the Silk Road is kind of the biggest use case of Bitcoin. But at the same time, on that note, the three kind of industries that really propagate and perpetuate a new technology was pornography, gambling, and
The black market.
what is it? It's one more. But it's very primal human instincts that people find an application for, and then it develops into something more legitimate. So
it's also societal outliers that are more willing to adopt
it's
it.
weird people trying weird things. That's
Any more questions? Yeah, go ahead. Last one. No?
So, normally in groups like this, there's a lot of white pills for crypto and blockchain. What about the environmental negligence of Nakamoto consensus?
yeah. So that I'm not concerned with that at all. Because I'm not an environmentalist. I believe in a Manichaean world, like in Zoroastrianism, you have Manichaeanism. I believe in a Manichaean world of good and evil opposing forces. My argument is so Churchill's quote was, democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the others. Bitcoin is the worst form of a money, except for all the others. So for me, it's the best thing out there for an economic model, but someone else has to introduce the concerns of the environmental side and compromise to some sort of solution and find a middle ground. But you can't be concerned with everything at the same time. It's kind of my
But
argument.
the adoption of it will directly coincide with millions of computers operating at 100% and wiping out the
Well,
electrical
okay,
grid.
so two things. The first thing is if you think about the cloud, right? Everybody thinks the cloud is up in the air. It's not. It's data centers, computers, rooms, a lot of energy being produced, but you're not seeing statistics come out about that because it's being used, it's being used and it's friendly right now. Another thing too is if you think about the example you used, we went from stagecoaches to cars, right? Probably there were people back in that time too who were like, oh my gosh, it's going to kill the environment. But in reality, as a more efficient use for transportation, the shift happened. And another thing too that they talk about is green energy is Satoshi's second gift. So if you think about this, out of lack is where innovation comes right now. Okay, so there's really no incentive other than government subsidies in order to have green energy solutions to your problems. But let's say you have an entire group of people that could use this as their form of money they agree that it's their form of money, so they're going to innovate and they're going to create green energy solutions in order to combat against this. There are a ton of miners parked in Seattle and in New York, and they're getting the benefits off of the waterfalls that are there. You know, there's just so many green energy solutions, and you're going to see Bitcoin and blockchain. It's going to ramp up the reason for us to need those.
Well, and the research and the resources it takes to prop up our existing financial infrastructure is supposed to be now replaced by Bitcoin. So that there should be some sort of consolidation there as well. But the short answer, to be totally honest and frank with you, is I don't care. But that's someone else's job to care.
It's if you think global warming is a thing. I mean, if you look at the, I don't know.
No, like I'm not going that far. What I'm saying is like, it's someone else's responsibility to make me aware of it and then to find a solution together. Is my opinion.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so time for, has anybody not put their card in the, yeah. Has anybody not put their card? The North American Bitcoin Conference, it's $850 value, so actually, I have discount codes if you yes. So, Manuel Perez. Oh, yeah. Oh, congratulations. Thanks, you guys, for coming. Ask about the VR filming and stuff. Our man is right here, and thanks for coming.